Good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum, and hello everyone. On behalf of Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our panel discussion on Pakistan and Russia challenges and opportunities for a comprehensive relationship. Uh, as you are aware, ladies and gentlemen, there have been two very important developments this month regarding the strengthening of relations between Pakistan and Russia. In a welcome move, Russia has provided a new structure for the North-South gas pipeline project. A team of experts is expected to land in Pakistan probably in the third week of this month to negotiate and finalize the way forward with timelines for initiation of the project, which is expected to be completed in 3 years. This 1100 kilometers pipeline will transport a regasified, liquefied natural gas from Karachi to Lahore. In another development, there has been a strengthening of strategic relations between the two countries. A contingent of Russian special forces arrived this month for a 2 week long military exercise, Druzhba 5, aimed at sharing the experiences of both the armies in counter-terrorism domain. I believe that both Russia and Pakistan have realized that bilateral cooperation is extremely necessary to achieve their national security and foreign policy objectives. Over the last decade, Pakistan and Russia bilateral relationship has commenced on a path of improvement, with both countries entering into multiple deals of cooperation in the domains of military, politics, and economics. I believe that Pakistan and Russia have realized and accepted the realities of international relations, learned from their past, and are further building upon the positive developments to solidify their bilateral relations for mutual benefits and for the good of the entire region. It is in line with this thinking that the Center for Strategic Perspectives at the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, has organized this panel discussion to discuss the challenges and opportunities that Pakistan and Russia need to overcome and capitalize respectively in order to achieve a stable and progressing comprehensive relationship. Uh, I, I am pleased that we are joined here for this panel discussion by an expert group of panelists. Let me introduce you to them here. We are joined from Russia by Mr. Leonard Savin. Mr. Leonard Savin is a geopolitical analyst, chief editor at Geopolitica, and he is also a member of the Military Scientific Society of the Ministry of Defense, Russia. We are also joined by Professor Dr. Shabir Ahmed Khan. Dr. Shabir is Director, Area Studies Center, Russia, China, and Central Asia at the University of Peshawar. We are also joined by Professor Dr. Adam Saud. Uh, Professor Saud is Dean of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, Bahria University, Islamabad. We also have with us our very own expert on Russia and a researcher here at the Center for Strategic Perspective, Taimur Khan. We are also joined by Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Ambassador Azaz Ahmed Chaudhry, and Chairman Board of Governors, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, for this panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, with that brief introduction, I would like to move on to our interactive discussion here on the subject of today, Pakistan and Russia, challenges and opportunities for a comprehensive relationship. My very first question would be to our friend from Russia, Mr. Leonard Savin. Mr. Savin, uh, let me ask you, how does Russia view its relationship with Pakistan at this point in time?
Thank you for invitation for the question. Of course, there is official position on Pakistan and unofficial. And in official agenda, there is not so much place for Pakistan because still kind of inertia. First of all, Soviet time, because during the Soviet time we cooperated with India, and second, because Russia was oriented to the West for many years. There was idea to cooperate with European Union countries and with United States. And now we see that Russia disappointed in the relation with the West, and we see the great turn to the East. Russia more interested to cooperate with Gulf and Asian countries. And under this umbrella, I think that Russia will be more reoriented to Pakistan. And now we see that there is interest, as you told during the introduction speech. Russia started some economical projects inside the Pakistan. Of course, there was some problem before. I mean, Pakistani debt from the Soviet Empire, but last year this problem was solved. So Russia can invest to Pakistan and to provide economic assistance and so on. It depends on our bilateral relations. And you already told about friendship exercise. It's going for a few years, and I think it's a very good example to promote bilateral relations, because like Klaus told, war is politics in other way, and we see that cooperation between the militaries of our countries is kind of promotion of the confidence and trust. It is very good. And of course, we have a lack of information about Pakistan inside of Russia. First of all, inside the administration of President and Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because few persons, the decision makers, surrounded by many people who are not famous about Pakistan opportunities and how to organize this kind of cooperations. There is old track of Indian-Russian relations and old track about cooperation with some Asian countries, and there is no enough information about Pakistan, especially about China-Pakistan economic corridor. And I think it's very important because Belt and Road Initiative and Eurasian Economic Union already joined it a few years ago. It was discussed on BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Joint Summit a few years ago. So it's important to promote Russian role inside of China-Pakistan economic corridor. So it's more about perspective. And of course, we have lack of expert on Pakistan inside of Russian establishment. It's a serious problem, as well as a problem in media and the environment inside of Russia, because no information about Pakistan, about what happens in Pakistan. I mean, really information, because many Russian media agencies very often take information from Indian or Western media agencies, and it is a general problem of Russian media activity.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Savin. Thank you for that Russian perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we should have a perspective on Pakistan as well in terms of its relationship with Russia. I would request Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Ambassador Azaz Ahmed Chaudhry, sir. Sir, as a diplomat who has years of experience in diplomacy, including a relationship with Russia, how do you look at Pakistan's relationship with Russia?
Thank you. I do want to join you in welcoming all the panelists for this discussion, which I believe is very important. My own sense is that in the last decade or so, so much has changed in the world. The entire orientation for the United States changed when it announces Asia Pivot and Asia Indo-Pacific strategy. That every country started to make adjustments. We also see the US-China competition intensifying, And therefore, in that context, we saw many other alignments shaping up, like US-India relationship becoming deeper, Pakistan getting close to China has always been, but in terms of economic projects like China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So we do see in the last couple of years a desire, a hopefully mutual desire on both sides, Pakistan and Russia, to open up and examine, re-look at this bilateral relationship from a new perspective. And I do agree with Mr. Savin that there is inertia, but there is a desire to break that inertia. I sat in one meeting of former Prime Minister with President Putin in 2015, and I found that President Putin at that time was deeply interested in opening up and warming up relations with Pakistan. I also agree with him that we need to find ways to increase the information level about each other. I don't think Pakistan now views Russia as an opponent in any sense, And therefore, this is a good welcome change. And I think we need to raise the awareness about Pakistan in Russia as well. And finally, on the CPAC, I do see that the Russian leadership has made a change towards welcoming the economic linkages with Asia, especially China's Belt and Road Initiative going to Eurasian landmass, and also its flagship project, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Within the CPAC, which is a bilateral project, but outside CPAC, there are several areas in which bilateral cooperation is very much possible. There was one little hurdle of some pending dues from the Soviet Union times that has since been settled. And so there is no legal hitch left. So I'm glad that Russian teams are visiting Pakistan for not only oil and gas cooperation, but also for defense and military cooperation. I see a bright future, but we need to move faster on these tracks. On the regional situation, I would like to actually pose some questions that, if you allow, Najm, could be answered by any of the panelists if they like. We would be interested how Russia is looking at South Asia, but also how it looks at Afghanistan, because we do see commonality of interest between Russia and Pakistan on Afghanistan as well. We would also like to know from the panelists how they see the politics shaping up in the Indo-Pacific region, and particularly in the Indian Ocean, and whether the Russians would be playing any part in that, given that America has mobilized Quad, which is the United States, India, Australia, and Japan. So whether Russians would be looking at these developments, and how do they see the world shaping up and our region shaping up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. I think both the questions that you have raised would demand perhaps a view from Russia itself. And perhaps before we move on to other panelists, maybe Leonard Savin would like to take up these questions and enlighten us on views from Russia, particularly in terms of how Russia is looking at Asia, and not just Asia, but also Afghanistan. And secondly, how do they see these worrying developments in the Asia Pacific region? Leonard?
Yes, you know that Russia was also participated in a negotiation process with Taliban, and but unfortunately we see that ceasefire agreements not works in Afghanistan. We don't know why, because maybe some radical elements. Of course, Russia interested to promote peace inside of Afghanistan. We experienced it well, and Pakistan also. what happens in Afghanistan and why this country is so important for regional security. And for Russia, it's also important because it's a neighbor country with Central Asian countries, members of Eurasian Economic Union. And of course, there is kind of element of Russian strategic culture that Russia would like to promote peace even when Russia needs to sacrifice some lives. How you see the recent events in the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic when Russian military helicopter was shot down by Azerbaijani side, but anyway, Russia bring all opportunities to build peace there, and now providing peacemakers to this region. So I think Russia efforts to promote peace in Afghanistan. And concerning other countries in Southeast Asia, of course, Russia interested. Russia is also a member of ASEAN and participated in ASEAN forum recently, and more interested in to promote economical ties with all these countries. We see that some Asian blocs not works anymore, like SAARC, for example, and mostly because of Indian position of this alliance. And maybe there will be a rise of another kind of unions or agreements in the Southeast Asia region. And I think Russia will be interested also to participate, kind of associative member or kind of another type of cooperation, because as I already told, Russia more looking to the east for the moment.
Thank you, Dr. Saveen. Regarding India and the growing strategic role it is assuming for the United States, we will come back to you later on that question. Let me move on for a question to Professor Dr. Shabir Ahmed. Shabir Saab, and you heard Azhar Saab saying that there is a bright future for Russia-Pakistan relations. In your opinion, what are the different avenues and vistas of cooperation which can be mutually capitalized by Pakistan and Russia in order to build a comprehensive and durable relationship?
Thank you, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Bilateral relationship is an evolutionary process, and it evolves in a continuously changing regional and global orientations. For the last decade or so, Pakistan-Russia relations have evolved, and we have witnessed warmth and much progress in almost all the walks of life. Both the governments have established the institutional mechanism for enhancing cooperation in diverse fields, including the Intergovernmental Commission on Trade and Commerce and Joint Working Group on Strategic Stability, Counterterrorism. 5 more working groups have been established on cooperation in education, food and agriculture, industry, energy. So the opportunities are so many, the sky is the limit. And both the countries, in fact, they are moving in the right direction. Further, the agreement to dispute of that of around $117 million already resolved. And then Pakistan has also expressed willingness to sign an FTA, free trade agreement, with the Eurasian Economic Commission. So all these developments prove that during the last decade or so, Pakistan and Russia have come much closer to each other. Their trust level has been developed, and Droiba 5, the joint military exercises are taking place here. What I see, the real potential and convergence of interests between Pakistan and Russia lies in the direction of Central Asia and Afghanistan. Pakistan, many studies declared Pakistan as a Central Asian state, and Pakistan looks at the connectivity, regional connectivity in Central Asia, regional cooperation in Central Asia as a welcome gesture, and Pakistan consider itself as a part. What brings Pakistan and Russia closer, that is connectivity between Central Russia via Central Asia and via Afghanistan to Pakistan and Indian Ocean and beyond. Earlier, an old version of North-South corridor was talked about, which included land and Caspian Sea, again land, and then Arabian Sea. I would suggest to both the countries, Russia and Pakistan, why not to develop the North-South corridor from Central Russia via Central Asian republics and Afghanistan to Pakistan, Indian Ocean, and beyond. That will be much easier to develop than the multi-modal, the earlier old version of North-South corridor. Further, Russia has been helping in the energy sector. In 2020, for $12 billion of agreements signed between Pakistan and Russia. But Linud also pointed out that there is least media coverage for these developments between Pakistan and Russia. Very important developments are taking place. Then Russia has offered its help in Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline. Russia has offered its help, and Russia can definitely help in Afghanistan integration from Central Asia to Pakistan. I mean, in providing help and assistance, political, financial, technological, in TAPI, in CASA 1000, because Central Asian republics, they are still looking towards Russia. They are still dependent on the Russian Federation. Some of the republics, they are hugely dependent on the remittances from Russian Federation. For security-wise, they are still dependent, and CSTO Russia is providing. So Central Asia and Afghanistan are the areas where the interests of Pakistan and Russia converge. How Russia looks at Afghanistan, this is an important question. This narcotics and drugs, this is a neurological, a very grave issue for Russian Federation. Leonid would agree with me that Russia has the highest per capita consumption of heroin in the world, and that originates from Afghanistan. Russia desires to have a strong, stable government in Afghanistan which can control this menace, and definitely Pakistan can be instrumental in that regard, and Pakistan also desires to have a strong, stable government, peaceful Afghanistan, which could serve as a conduit. And this integration between Central Asia and South Asia via Afghanistan will be decisive for eliminating the roots of narco economy and would substantially decrease Afghanistan's dependence on foreign aid, and definitely will play a role in eliminating the root causes of terrorism there, because these, I mean, Uzbekistan has planned the railway, energy, this TAPI and CASA, Central Asia to South Asia electricity project. So all these projects, Russia can definitely help. And the Russian friends, they ask, in fact, us how we can help you in a meeting in Islamabad. They have asked that how Russia can help Pakistan in Afghanistan. So definitely, uh, these are the avenues for further cooperation, and here the interests of both the countries do converge, and both the countries can and must capitalize these opportunities.
Thank you, Dr. Some excellent suggestions in the areas we can where we can increase our cooperation with Russia: education, food, agriculture, energy. I believe we are already working on. Connectivity is something that I would come back to later, of course. Let me move on to our next question to Dr. Adam Saud. Dr. Saab, how we've already heard in terms of economic areas we can work on. In terms of military, how can Pakistan expand the ambit of its military relations with Russia beyond the periodic military exercises in terms of improving, establishing a deeper geostrategic cooperation?
Well, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everybody. The question is very pertinent, very relevant, and is being asked by many of the people, whether they are students or they are scholars, that the recent convergence of interest between Pakistan and Russia, that has given high hopes that both these states, they are going to cooperate with each other, especially into the regional politics of, broader region. There is not only South Asia, but the surrounding regions as well, especially in Central Asia and the Middle East as well. Now, so far coming towards the question regarding the military relationship between the two states, again, the prospects are very high, but we need to understand the ground realities first. We know that both the states, they did not have very good relations for more than 6 decades. And it's been almost 1 decade now that we are onto the path of development and onto the path of cooperation. So, assuming right now that the two states having high profile kind of military relationship is not into, it should not be into the consideration, because we need to build up the trust level first. That is underway. And secondly, the people to people connectivity between the both states is almost none. It's very less so far. The bilateral relations of these two countries with other states are concerned. However, we have seen that it's a frequent activity now that both the countries, they are conducting joint military exercises, and even now the same is going on. And the good development was when Pakistan bought 4 Mi-35M helicopters from Russia, and that was, the first step towards the long and enhanced military cooperation between the two states. But we know that the things, they do not go on a faster pace or on a swift pace. You need to have some time to understand each other and to build up the relationship. So for me, I think that besides the military cooperation, so far the military arsenal is concerned, there are 2 other important aspects where we can enhance the relationship between the 2 states. That is one, the counterterrorism strategies, which Dr. Shabir has already explained. That is very important because the terrorism is a threat for the whole region. And rightly pointed out by Dr. Shabir Ahmed that Afghanistan is the major problem for the North and South, or you can say Central Asia and South Asia connectivity. And unless Afghanistan is not stabilized, the whole region, all the states of this region, they would be facing the problem of terrorism. So therefore, it's very important that Pakistan and Russia, they should cooperate in this particular field. And one avenue, that is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And we know that Shanghai Cooperation Organization has one agency, that is the Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure, where the intelligence is shared within the member states. that can be utilized for the counterterrorism activities in the whole region. Then another important area of cooperation can be the civilian nuclear deals, where we know that Pakistan is energy deficient country, and obviously there are the nuclear technology is used for so many other things as well. So there we can also cooperate with each other, and both the states, they can utilize this technology and expertise from each other to develop so many technologies which are dependent upon the nuclear technology. So for military relations, we need to wait and see, and I personally I think that it would take some time to have more and more military cooperation between the two states.
Thank you, Dr. Adam Sow. Ladies and gentlemen, my next question is to our young researcher at the Center for Strategic Perspective. There has been a lot of talk about Afghanistan by all our panelists here, and I would like to pose this question to our young researcher here, Taimur. How can Pakistan and Russia cooperate with each other to ensure peace in Afghanistan and, of course, connectivity in the region?
Thank you, sir. Sir, before I begin to answer the question, I would like to thank you, the Director CSP, and the Director General ISSI, Ambassador Azam Chaudhary, for giving me this opportunity to speak and share this panel with such esteemed experts. It is also my privilege to share this panel with Dr. Adam Saud, who was my professor throughout my undergraduate studies. Now coming to the question, if you look at the Pakistan-Russia relations, we'll find that there are two factors that have significantly dominated the trajectory and nature of these bilateral relations. Number one, Pakistan's close cooperation with the United States of America, and number two, Russia's strong and strategic economic relationship with India. These two factors, according to my humble opinion, have always significantly dominated Pak-Russia relations, due to which both countries have mostly been at the opposite sides of the table. But things are never constant in international relations, and there has been considerable improvement in bilateral relations between Pakistan and Russia, especially after Russia lifted the self-imposed embargo on Pakistan in June 2014. Much of this improvement in bilateral relations can be attributed to the changes in the geostrategic environment that persuaded both states to adopt a policy of rapprochement towards each other. Pakistan, after the first decade of the 21st century, realized its need to increase and diversify its foreign relations and policy options and not solely rely on any one country. So it began establishing good relations with a number of regional and extra-regional countries. Meanwhile, Russia, on the other hand, realized its newfound role as a major power in the multipolar world order, decided to adopt a different holistic approach towards South Asia, as opposed to a country-centric one that was adopted earlier. Much of this Russian realization also came after its strategic partner, India, planned to decrease its weapons imports and began inching closer towards the United States. However, the most significant factor that aided significantly in the warming of Pak-Russia relations is their shared interests vis-a-vis Afghanistan. As mentioned by other esteemed panelists, the shared interests of Pakistan and Russia revolve around three major things: the peace and stability in Afghanistan, narcotics trade emanating from Afghanistan, and resurgence of terrorism in the country. In my opinion, both countries are already doing a great deal in the given circumstances in order to facilitate and ensure peace in Afghanistan. Both countries have reached out to the Afghan governments and the Afghan Taliban and other stakeholders in the country to reach a peaceful political solution of Afghanistan conundrum. Besides hosting, organizing, and facilitating multiple peace initiatives like the Murray Talks in 2015, Moscow Process Meetings in 2016 and 2017, the 2018 Multilateral Dialogue on Afghanistan in Moscow, and the latest Doha Agreement in Qatar, Pakistan and Russia have always contributed to several reconstruction efforts in Afghanistan, conducted training of the Afghan security forces, offered special education scholarships to Afghan students, provide access to medical facilities, and conduct capacity building training programs for members of Afghan civil society on a regular basis. Not to mention hosting of millions of Afghan refugees for several decades by Pakistan. Moreover, Both Pakistan and Russia support the idea of Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace and reconciliation process. However, there is always room for improvement. Other than facilitating peace process and negotiations for settlement in Afghanistan, more economic activities should be provided and facilitated for the Afghans by Pakistan and Russia. If there are more incentives for the people not to fight, the hostilities will decrease automatically and consensus among different parties will be possible as they will have more stakes involved in maintaining peace and stability in the country. Islamabad and Moscow can increase cooperation in the field of anti-narcotics operations as the narco trafficking emanating from Afghanistan, as mentioned by previous or earlier panelists, is a common threat for both countries. Both countries can collaborate on eliminating the drug trafficking rings and disrupting the supply chains that make way into the Russian mainland and Pakistan. Terrorism is also a common threat for both countries, especially from organizations like ISSI-CSP in Afghanistan. Both countries have suffered immensely due to terrorism, and while ISSI-CSP is increasing its operations once again inside of Afghanistan, Pakistan and Russia can assist Afghan government in battling this menace by building capacity of the Afghan defense forces by providing training, equipment, and sharing vital intelligence in order to maintain the surge. Peace and stability in Afghanistan, however, is a prerequisite to the connectivity in the region, which is the latter part of the question. All projects and initiatives of connectivity in this region can only succeed if peace and stability returns to Afghanistan. There are multiple projects which can be facilitated by cooperation of Russia and Pakistan that will bring true connectivity and prosperity in the region. For example, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is the flagship project of China's BRI. With several existing complementarities in China's BRI and Russia's Eurasian economic model, Pakistan can act as a zipper between two grand schemes, which will bring unprecedented economic activity and progress in the region. There are several other comparatively small economic, energy, and transit projects where Pakistan and Russia can cooperate to facilitate regional connectivity, such as the North-South Transport Corridor. If this corridor is connected to the CPEC, it will allow Russia to access markets of South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Africa, while nations of these regions will also get a direct access to the Central Asian and European markets as well. This project can then further be extended to Afghanistan, which will definitely complement the peace and economic prosperity in the war-torn country. Another project to that can be jointly worked on by Pakistan and Russia is the railway line consortium that was agreed upon by railway administrations of Uzbekistan, Russia, Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, and Pakistan back in 2018. If implemented and completed, this railway transport corridor will connect EU, Russia, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and the states of Southeast Asia. Russia, being a major regional power, can help in bringing all the stakeholders on the table and facilitate in reaching a consensus. As per initial studies, this project will generate employment for about 30,000 Afghan citizens, besides an annual transit profit of $400 to $500 million per year. Moreover, Russia can increase its energy diplomacy with Pakistan, as the latter has a growing energy need and can prove to be a good market for Russia's energy sources that are in abundance. The infrastructure that will transport energy to Pakistan can further be extended to other countries that could generate more revenue for Russia and countries facilitating such energy transfer. But this will only be possible if there is peace and stability in Afghanistan, which is being facilitated by Pakistan and Russia already, but those efforts can further be enhanced and improved as stated earlier. In the end, I would just like to add that the main task for the achievement of peace and stability in Afghanistan has to be undertaken by the leadership and people of Afghanistan. Pakistan and Russia and other regional and extra-regional stakeholders can definitely facilitate the people and government of Afghanistan, but the people and the government of Afghanistan itself are the ones who have to achieve consensus and unity amongst themselves for a durable and lasting peace and stability in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Taimur. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get another perspective from another diplomat, our chairman, Board of Governors at the Institute of Strategic Studies, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood. Sir, given the past history of Pakistan-Soviet relations, how do you see Pakistan-Russian relations developing, particularly in the changed geopolitical and geo-economic circumstances?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. See, I have heard many distinguished scholars on this subject of Pak-Russia relations. And I think they have provided ample food for thought. I would like to add a little bit from my side. And that is, there are two phases in Pak-Russia relations. One is pre-end of Cold War or during the Cold War, and the other one is post the end of Cold War. And this also happens to be when Soviet Union is transformed into Russian Federation. So in the Cold War era, the constraints on Pak-Russia relations were US-Soviet, of course, rivalry. Pakistan somehow became aligned to the West, and naturally it restricted development of relations with Russia. We were part of, as you know, the military pacts at that time, Western military pacts. So this was one constraint. Second was that Indo-Soviet relations, they had developed very closely, and inversely, Pakistan-Russia relations suffered, And thirdly, in fact, in the earlier days, it was even Sino-Soviet rivalry. So much so that they had even border clashes at one time. So we were, of course, aligned towards China, and when Sino-Soviet rivalry, that also constricted the development of Pak-Russian relations. And as Savin pointed out, at that time, in fact, Russia was more looking towards the West, and Loki's policy or emphasis on developing its presence and connectivity to the East, it came on later on. So the worst time, of course, as I said, nadir of point of Pak-Russia relations was following the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and that pitted Pakistan squarely against the Soviet Union. So this is the legacy, one cannot ignore. And in fact, I would think that many important people in the Soviet and the Russian bureaucracy now must be, their thinking must be colored by this history of Pak-Russia relations during the Cold War. But after the end of the Cold War, and particularly after succession of Soviet Union by the Russian Federation, there is a whiff of change. The circumstances have greatly transformed in all those fields. The US, Pak-US relations, they have attenuated. Everyone knows they are not of the same kind as were during the Cold War. So there is a diminution in the content of Pak-US relations. On the other hand, Indo-US relations, they have blossomed. And this factor also is affecting the Indian-Russian relations. Meanwhile, the Sino-Russian bonhomie has developed, which all these things, the attenuation in Pakistan-US relations, the blossoming of Indo-US relations, this development of good relations between China and Russia, they all propel towards the direction of a growing Pakistan-Russia relationship. Now, but I must say that the progress has been rather glacial, very slow speed. But it's not surprising given the, as I said, the baggage of history. And also that when we say that there is some change in the Indo-US relations, one should not, magnify or give too much, salience to this point, because still there is very strong relationship between India and Russia, given the fact that Indian, arms, defense equipment, that still is its modernization, its maintenance, it's still dependent on Russian supplies. And also so much so that even in the peaceful nuclear field, there is collaboration between Russia and India. So in these circumstances, one has to see what can be done to promote this Russia-Pakistan relationship, for which, as Director General Azaz Chaudhry pointed out, there is mutual desire at the highest level, at the leadership level. So already we see some change in the atmosphere. For example, Russia has lifted its embargo on supply of defense equipment to Pakistan. There are now joint military exercises. There has been exchange of visits in the defense field. Our Chief of Army Staff has visited Russia, and there have been reciprocal visits from Russia. So this is one field in defense that there are good prospects, of further collaboration. And this is linked, in fact, to the collaboration on the security side, because Russia is very much concerned about these menaces of extremism, terrorism, and drug trafficking. So this all requires greater collaboration between Pakistan and Russia, because Russia is concerned that these terroristic activities could spill over into the Central Asian states, what's called the near abroad of Russia, and then consequently Russia cannot remain unaffected by that. So there is some common point between Pakistan and Russia in trying to control these phenomena of extremism, drug trafficking, terrorism. So there is, in this way, Russia can be expected to support Pakistan's efforts in this direction. In the economic field, Russia has been involved since before, even during the Cold War. We had this steel mill established by the Soviet Union. And so there are good prospects, particularly in the energy field, and to which Mr. Najam also pointed out the latest developments. Also, as Director General pointed out, that there was one sticking point about some non-settlement of certain Russian claims, about $96 million or so. So Russians were saying that they cannot proceed in this field of economic cooperation unless that problem is settle according to their law. So that now impediment is has been removed, and I see that mutually beneficial economic cooperation has a better chance now. Of course, trade is minimal, but all this, takes time to develop. So there is scope for greater mutual trade, investment, and joint ventures. Even Russia has offered to come in the field of agriculture. But another bond which is developing, which has developed between Pakistan and Russia is the Afghan peace settlement. Now, Afghanistan was the point of the conflict between Pakistan and Russia. Now, bringing peace to Afghanistan is rather a point which brings Russia and Pakistan together, because both are interested in bringing peace and stability to Afghanistan as much as possible, because it is they feel that it will be not only good in maintaining peace and security in their respective countries and regions, but also it will also promote greater economic activity, connectivity between Russia, Central Asia, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. So all these things we have to see under the also rubric of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which, as we know, is has great potential and also is a very live regional organization now, and that also provides a chapeau for greater collaboration between Pakistan and Russia in diverse fields. So I'm quite hopeful, but one should not be starry-eyed and to think that as if there are no still constraints. It is Indian factor is still potent factor, and Russia cannot ignore that. And also lack of information about each other has been pointed out by Savin. I think that is also an important point, because unless people know each other, opportunities and one factor which had inhibited Russian investment in Pakistan is, of course, the state of security in Pakistan. Now that the situation has improved, I think one can expect Russians feeling more secure in considering investments in Pakistan. So there is, overall, I would like to sum up by saying that the process of building up ties between Pakistan and Russia has started to a good start. And the impact of the changed geoeconomic and geopolitical circumstances point out to greater collaboration between the two countries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You've given me a lot of cues for my next round of questions, particularly for our friend from Russia, Dr. Leonard Savin. And if you don't mind, I would like to fire off a couple of them simultaneously. Savin, is it all right if I put on a couple of questions to you together? Chairman Khalid Mahmood mentioned that for improvement of and strengthening of relations, there has to be a mutual desire at the highest level, which leads me to ask you a question. Can we expect President Putin or maybe even the Foreign Minister, Mr. Sergei Lavrov, to visit Pakistan anytime soon? Number two, in terms of, there has been a lot of concern in terms of growing Indian strategic relationship. How does Russia look at this new strategic relationship that India has developed with United States, particularly in terms of strategic agreements that have been signed recently, the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, and previously Leoma and COMCASA, all of them related to military cooperation. How are these agreements looked at by Russian strategists? And my last third question is, because there was a lot of talk about connectivity, there is this Russian Eurasian economic model. Keeping that in mind, do you think that this particular model, the Russian Eurasian economic model, can complement China's BRI, particularly in terms of China-Pakistan economic corridor, in terms of increasing connectivity within the region?
Thank you for the questions. Yes, I think somewhere in future, Mr. Putin or maybe Mr. Lavrov or next foreign minister can and should visit Pakistan. Now we are under the situation of COVID pandemic, and many visits of prime minister, or foreign minister, our president postponed and cancelled. For example, Balkan tour of Minister Lavrov was cancelled, and planned trip of Mr. Putin to Belgrade also cancelled. So we just need to wait when the pandemic will end. Then we will start recovery of our economics and need more contacts. And of course, there need to be kind of background for such kind of visit. What the reason of visit of our leader to Pakistan? So it should be kind of very important event. It's my opinion. And then, of course, because of very busy schedule and especially because our leadership mostly focused on domestic politics and economics for last year. I mean, referendum about Russian constitution, about a new prime minister and some changes inside of Russian government and ministries. And there will be still maybe for next 2 years, our leadership will be busy with domestic economics. And also because of elections in Russian parliament planned for next year. But of course, we should think in strategic sense and think about 3-5 years and promote idea of visit of Russian leaders to the Pakistan. And of course, from my side, I will do my best for this kind of promotion. Second, about Indian and American relations. Of course, Russia is deeply concerned, I can repeat, deeply concerned about military political cooperation between India and United States, because Russia understands well that all these types of cooperations means kind of provocations against Eurasian powers like China and like Russia. And of course, because it's Indian-American cooperation, it means provocations against Pakistan too. Second, India now promoting new strategy of defense productions. It means that next 5 or 10 years, India will need more Russian supplies, and Russia understands it well and needs another markets in Asia region, and in Africa, or maybe in Latin America. It means that Russia will be reoriented from Indian market to other countries. It's reality, because it's Indian decision, and Russia cannot do anything for this kind of military cooperation between Russia and India. And of course, Americans are more proactive, and they try to fill vacuum in this industry sector and provide some technologies like Israel. For example, Israel and India, they have about more than 100 joint military security projects. So we see that cooperation between Israel is on high level with India. And the same we expected for United States. at least under the Modi regime, because BJP party always was pro-American. It is a historical fact. And about third questions about Belt Road Initiative and Eurasian Economic Union, of course, because China-Pakistan economic corridor is kind of example. It's kind of demonstrative element of Belt and Road Initiative. I think that Russia should and must join this project, just like test, for example, because it's already working. We see that it's already stable inside Pakistan, and it brings more opportunities for connectivity for the Russia. And we have our good friend in Eurasian Commission, Minister Sergei Glaziev, and I think we discussed this issue with him, how to promote this process. Of course, we need to remember that bureaucracy is bureaucracy, and they need time to resolve all kind of work with documents.
Thank you, Dr. Saveen. Dr. Shabir Ahmed, you gave some very good suggestions in terms of improving connectivity between Pakistan and Russia through Afghanistan and Central Asia. My question is, where do you see Pakistan and Russia relations headed in, say, the next 10 years in that regard?
Well, I'm quite optimistic about the lateral forums like under SCO as well as bilaterally. This word Crimea has significance in the history of Russia. In 1855, it was after the Crimean War when Russia realized that its future is in Asia, and within the next 20 years, Tsarist Russia reached to the Amudarya. In 2014, again Crimea happens, and again Russia realizes that its future lies in Asia. So in the post-Crimea period, Russia is looking towards Asia for strategic as well as economic partners. Currently, Eurasia and Eurasianism is the foreign policy of Russian Federation. Eurasian integration and Eurasian Union, in which Russia considers China an important partner, because this China will be instrumental in the development of Far East, Eastern Russia, Vladivostok, up to Vladivostok. And China will be instrumental in connecting Western and Eastern Russia, as well as connecting Russian Federation, Central Asia towards the South Asian region. It is here where Pakistan's importance and Pakistan's role come into play. Under the SCO, this with the Russo-Chinese collaboration and this Sino-Russian collaboration for Eurasian integration and Pakistan's role via Central Asia and Afghanistan is very much important. So I think in the future, if this Eurasian integration materializes, and it will materialize if Russia and China remains in collaboration, because during the last century, though Mackinder presented this Eurasian Heartland theory in 1904, but due to two reasons, they did not materialize. And due to those two reasons, it will materialize in this 21st century. One, this Russo-Chinese collaboration. The Eurasian powers remained divided during the last century. And secondly, the technological development. The pipelines, sophisticated high-speed railways and highways, roads. So Glenn Deason, he's a strategist, and he said that this Eurasian integration will cause a major trade shift from the sea lanes of communication to the overland transportation routes. And here Pakistan's role will come into play. So in future, I see that Pakistan of this Russo-Chinese collaboration, Pakistan will be an important part and angle because Russia realizes the importance of Pakistan's strategic location. China and Pakistan already very close relationship, very time-tested relationship, and in fact, this Chinese factor solidifies and the Pak-Russia collaboration because China helped Pakistan uh, in having the membership in SCO, and China also played a role in bringing Pakistan and Russia together. And definitely, other regional states, neighbors of Afghanistan, they have also important roles in this connectivity. And Pakistan and Russia, they have this common views on regional connectivity and a regional approach for regional issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. There has been also talk about very little knowledge within Russia in terms of Pakistan itself. Dr. Saud, how can Pakistan help increase the understanding of Pakistan and issues therein within Russia?
Well, thank you very much, sir. But again, the most important thing is more connectivity between the two states. And until and unless you do not know each other, you cannot project the right picture of yourself, whether it is Russia or it's Pakistan. Maybe, the Russians, they would be thinking about Pakistan in terms, purely in terms of security concerns. And maybe the Pakistanis, they would be thinking about Russia purely in terms of, something else. But the most important thing is that we need to enhance people to people cooperation. And for that purpose, the most important thing that has been highlighted by Dr. Shabir Ahmed, I would endorse his idea and his arguments that the BRI project and the CPEC project, which have been initiated by China, are basically to integrate the whole region through high sophisticated type of railway lines and highways and all. This is the most important thing that had been missing throughout the history in order to connect the whole region. The old Soviet style infrastructure that was built in Central Asia, that had deteriorated a lot. And with the initiation of this BRI project and the Chinese investment coming into Central Asia, we have seen that now new highways and the railway projects, they are under construction. And these highways would not only enhance the intra-regional connectivity, but obviously inter-regional connectivity as well. Now, when Professor Saab has talked about the energy, relationship between China, between Russia and Pakistan. Again, I would contribute that the Turkmen gas is primarily exported to international markets through Russia. Similarly, Kyrgyzstan, it also imports major chunk of its crude oil from Russia. And recently, we have seen that the process of expanding the Eurasian Economic Union within Central Asia is underway, and the Uzbek president and the Uzbek regime, current Uzbek regime, it has showed, inclination to join the Eurasian Economic Union. So again, when these states, they join the Eurasian Economic Union, Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan are already the members. So then it means the union can reach up to the borders of Afghanistan. And again, the pivotal point, the most important connecting dot is Afghanistan. So everybody knows that stability of Afghanistan is the stability of the whole region. And once this stability comes, then, it would be easier for us and the Russian people to connect with each other. Then, there are certain other important areas which need to be explored. Dr. Shabir has, in his first round of talk, he has he has explained and he has told us that, you know, there are different areas where different agreements and memorandum of understandings they have been signed. But the important thing is how to materialize them. I don't say that, you know, you go and you start the projects on a larger scale. You can start with, you know, smaller projects and then increase them to the larger scale. Now, the trade relations, most important thing would be where there would be joint ventures where investors from both the states, they start joint ventures there and here in order to increase the trade activities. Then there is a need to start road shows in both the countries in order to, you know, get the people know about each other. That would definitely bring people closer to each other. Then educational exchange programs, and in educational exchange programs I would recommend and suggest that since Russia is far better in technical education and Pakistan really needs technical education, you know, here in Pakistan we are following the orthodox type of education that makes that produces, you know, numbers but not the technical force. So we can get support and help from Russia where technical education is you know, up to the mark, and they can provide us their expertise in this particular sector. Then another important missing dot is the tourism sector in Russia and in Pakistan. We need to explore the tourism opportunities for the people of both the countries, and in order to know each other. That is a very important point, or very important area where both the states need to do lot many things. Then recently we have seen that Russia claims that they have brought, you know, 3 vaccines for COVID-19. So health sector, again, it's very important to have cooperation in health sector. Again, uh, one thing that also needs to be incorporated or materialized is when these railway connections and road connection, highway connections, they are built, the optic fiber cable is the must thing. You know, when you connect these two states with optic fiber cable, the connectivity and communication it would enhance automatically, and then people from both the countries, they would definitely be coming closer. So once your people to people connectivity is enhanced, and as I explained earlier on, your trust level is increased, definitely economic and investment opportunities, they are going to increase. We are the members of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and this Eurasian Economic Union, when it is expanded within the Central Asian region, it would also provide opportunities for Pakistan. But again, uh, I would agree with the, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood's point that we also need to uh, uh, seriously consider about the Indian factor as well, because we know that Russia and India, they have a very close relationship, and be it the economic relationship, military cooperation, political cooperation, wherever. So we need to chart out such a strategy that should not be against the interest of Pakistan, and it can have a longer impact so far Pakistan and Russia relations are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Adam So. Some excellent suggestions. Road shows, technical education, tourism sector, vaccines, very important in the age of COVID. Excellent suggestions there. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you also mentioned the stability in Afghanistan, which leads me to another question for our friend in Russia, Dr. Savin. You know, the Americans have been saying that they would be withdrawing from Afghanistan. President Trump even claimed during his election campaign that U.S. troops would be all back by Christmas. How do you and Russia look at these statements, and would this be a factor that would lead to greater connectivity within the region?
Russia is welcomed that idea to withdraw American troops from Afghanistan, and not from Afghanistan only, but also from the Middle East. I think that idea of Donald Trump is good because he proponent of a little bit isolationism of United States, and it was obsolete idea to keep so many American bases and troops in the region, and of course there will be kind of political vacuum inside of Afghanistan, and the main problem how to reorganize the political system inside. American and Western ideas of nation building not works there. We see it all. So there should be another kind of idea working for Afghanistan society. What idea is? Of course, I think that is idea of political sustainability based on traditional values and conservative ideas and respect of different cultural traditions, because Afghanistan is not one nation state like, for example, Poland. It is there are different ethnic groups living inside of Afghanistan, different religion groups. So it should be kind of complex approach to Afghan problem. And still, I think, and I am sure that in Russia there is a lack of understanding what happens inside, because there is no field research for last decades inside of Afghanistan. But still, we have good old experts from Soviet times who were in Afghanistan for during the times of Soviet troops stand there. Of course, new ideas should be promoted, new ideas of political system, and some participants already told idea of to enlarge Eurasian Economic Union, to think about greater Eurasian Economic Union, and with all membership, Asian countries and countries. It's also idea of Vladimir Putin about Eurasian Union from Lisbon to Vladivostok. And of course, the old opponents and should be find a bridge for discussion and for negotiations. And like German politician philosopher Carl Schmitt told, there are no eternal enemies and friends in politics. And I think that also between Pakistan and India, they maybe found a good decision to organize and stable and good relations between both countries. So we just start this process. Start from discussion, from ideas, from political philosophy.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some time. We are beyond our time here for the panel discussion, but we still have time, a couple of minutes for an interactive discussion between the participants and the panelists here. We are open to questions for a few questions from our panelists. Please, if any of our participants would like to raise a question for our experts here at the panel, they are most welcome to. You can send me your question in the chat, or perhaps we can unmute you and let you ask the question. No questions from our participants. Well,
Just one additional remark about Pakistan-Russian relations.
Yes,
I heard from some Russians who live in Pakistan that there is no any place when students can to study Russian language, and I think it's a real problem, because if Russians come to Pakistan, they need not to study Urdu or Hindi, because they can to communicate English language, of course. And when Pakistani citizens comes to Russia, they should to know Russian language, because not all speak English inside of Russia, and where they can study Russian language. now that there is no institutions who can provide this kind of opportunity.
Well, we have the Institute of Model Languages here in Islamabad, promoting, of course, all kinds of languages, including Russian, um, for Pakistani students who wish to learn Russian. But like you said, there has to be an increased understanding between Pakistan and Russia of both the countries, particularly on the side of Russia itself. My perception from your comments is that there needs to be an increased understanding of both Pakistan and Pakistanis. Perhaps our embassy needs to promote more cultural shows within Russia in terms of course, exchange of academics and, of course, the visits by officials in Pakistan.
Sir,
For
I
a
would
greater,
also like to add something, if you
so
allow.
please,
Uh,
Taimur.
Sir, in response to Mr. Leonid Savin's comment, I would like to add that if you have someone, some acquaintance of yours in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, if you can kindly intimate it to your embassy in Islamabad to be a little more active and engage more with the people of Pakistan, especially the students in academia, that would be really helpful for us as well, because all the information that we have of Russia is from the open source, and all that open source is dominated by the American or the Western narrative or perspectives. So if you can kindly convey this message of ours to your embassy in Islamabad, that if they are more open to us, we will be better able to communicate and better able to understand each other's point of view as well. Thank you.
Thank you for information.
In terms of the languages, Professor Shabir informs me that the Area Study Center in Peshawar also offers courses in Russian language. So we have at least two identifiable institutions which are offering Russian languages to the people here in Pakistan. I see that there are no more questions. Ambassador Azaz, would you like to add something to
all right,
before I
sure.
conclude, sir?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm encouraged by today's discussion, because I believe nearly every panelist was optimistic. Though we were struggling to identify more areas of cooperation, but I think there is a critical mass. And my sense is that other think tanks in Pakistan, which are also speaking on Pakistan-Russia relations, have also come out with an optimistic note, with a positive note that this relationship has the potential to grow. So I am quite confident. In fact, I'm very encouraged by today's discussion, and I hope that our press release and our report will reflect that.
Certainly, sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been an enlightening discussion. We would be having much more such discussions on Pakistan-Russia relations. And Dr. Saveen, we look forward to more Russian experts joining us along with yourself at such panel discussions. Thank you to our expert panelists for joining us this afternoon today. And thank you, participants, for joining us at this panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our discussion today. We be safe, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you very much. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.